Aaron Sampson, you played a ton of Call of Duty Modern Warfare multiplayer only, and it seems like it's a fundamental change for the franchise based on the footage I saw that you recorded, but having played hours of it, is that true?
Yeah, this feels like Call of Duty is all grown up. It's not arcadey. It's just a complete teardown of the franchise. And they put a new engine in, and then they just built it back up around the skeleton of what Call of Duty is. There's plenty of things in this that are still familiar, like you'll still recognize kill streaks instead of score streaks this time around. And you'll recognize a lot of the perks, but everything else feels different. So the guns are just completely redesigned, and the sound design around these guns is just incredible. We're sort of going into Battlefield territory now with how Frostbite handles sound.
Sure.
And we're also going into that territory with really unique stuff like night fighting maps and big team battle maps. We got to play a 20v20. I was rolling around in a tank in a Call of Duty game, which is something I've never done before.
Sure.
And it just feels like they've rethought it and they've examined it and tried to make it as different as possible. So the arcadiness is very much out, and there's just a lot more posting up, building loadouts, going through your toolbox per mode, and I really like it.
You mentioned big team battles. That's one of the things that you kept emphasizing when we're asking you what you saw there. Can you break down what that is? I know you said 20v20. Does that fundamentally change how you play Call of Duty? Is it a nice merger of the new mechanics and bigger maps and what we're used to in terms of Call of Duty firefights?
Yeah, so we played 10v10 and 20v20, and one of our editors, Phil, he did an interview where they hinted at maybe they could even go up to 100.
Oh, wow.
They haven't talked about anything like Blackout, so we think they were actually talking about, maybe even a 50v50, which is, again, like we're now heading into other games territories, which is really cool. But the way that this game is built, the big team battle modes, they work really well. And what the weirdest thing is that in the large modes, it felt very Call of Duty because there were so many people calling in their kill streaks at any given time. Like it almost felt more Call of Duty than the smaller maps did just because of the cadence of the rounds. The other really cool aspect of the large battles is they really bring into play how unique their weapon systems are now. So you can build loadouts in a gun bench, and these loadouts let you change weapons, but every attachment has a plus or a minus. So like something that's more controllable might make you slower or might make you aim slower. You can screw up a gun build for the first time in a while. I can't remember the last time you could just build a bad gun in Call of Duty.
Sure.
Which is really fun.
Yeah.
And then customizing your kill streaks for a larger map matters. So radar is personal in this version of the game. There is a team radar kill streak, but the vast majority of radar is just on your character, and the radar map isn't even up most of the time. So in the big maps, it was more important to try and figure out where people were. But unlike previous Call of Duties, the mini-map and the radar were just way less important in every other mode in this game.
So, like typically Call of Duty games, even though they're all made by different studios, they feel like they're fundamentally like building off of each other.
Yeah.
This one, from the footage I've seen, seems like such a dramatic departure. Does it feel like they're still taking elements from like Black Ops 4? I mean, that game's like incredibly arcadey, and it's got like hero shooter elements and.
Yeah. Black Ops 4 did some really interesting things that I think the Call of Duty community had mixed reactions to.
Right.
Operators were kind of controversial. I think Operators brought in a larger audience of people who loved hero shooters, but there were also a lot of people who just didn't want to have to deal with barbed wire in a room.
Yeah.
So this game is more like that in the sense of the gadgets, and also maybe like a little bit of Rainbow Six Siege. So there are barricades, and this game is way more focused around choke points on the map. So instead of 3 lanes, there are buildings, and you have to hold those buildings. So in that sense, that fortification aspect of it and sort of the power play aspect of those buildings, it's a little bit more like Black Ops and a little bit more like a game like Rainbow Six Siege. However, they don't seem to want to repeat the operators. So there are cosmetic operators in this game, and they have voice lines, and they have apparently unique executions, but they're not gadget-based.
Okay, so they're kind of going back to like older Modern Warfare, where it's more you're building your own personal class, essentially.
Yeah, and that's really cool. There's so many like nifty little touches to this game where they thought about it. So if you get killed a bunch of times by somebody, there's just a button you can press to copy their loadout. So you can instantly figure out what it was that they killed you with and how they kitted it out. It's like a really good learning tool.
We play Call of Duty year in and year out, so we get to see the I guess incremental changes from one game to another. Now, the big thing that everyone's talking about, you're talking about, is the fundamental changes, how this kind of deconstructs what we know Call of Duty as in the modern sense. But the moment-to-moment action, like, what does that feel like for you who plays Call of Duty every year?
So what developers said, and that's a great question, what they said was they're trying to accommodate a bunch of different play styles. Mm-hmm. Being somebody who does like to post up, I found a lot more of that in this game. So many more objectives where there actually is a sticky system where you can mount a weapon on something that I use to a certain degree. But so much more of my loadouts were about posting up, and the game was so much more accommodating to that because gunplay was slower and it was less controllable by a wide margin.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the guns, and the guns are based on calibers, so SMGs are a little bit easier to control, but they also felt way less powerful. And like LMGs are more powerful, have more bullet penetration, which is in previous games, but they jump around so much more now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of up to you as a player to fix your loadout in order to bring that gun under control if you want to, or turn it into like a tap fire weapon.
Sure.
So yeah, like particularly on game modes like Domination, there was so much more posting up and controlling areas with slower movement.
Yeah.
There's also now a whole new door system. So there's closed doors on the map, and they can be blown open, they can be run and slid through, but if you do that, it's super loud. There's like a big clang, and everybody knows you just entered a building, or you can just kind of quietly open the door and go through. So they've changed a lot of these systems, it feels like to slow the game down. Fair warning though, and when people get their hands on the game, they said they want to accommodate different playstyles. So you might end up with the jumpy, slidey shotgun bullshit.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, you're talking about how much more subtle the customization is, and how you can accommodate different playstyles. So I'm looking at the footage, and I'm trying to think if someone can play this like they have played other Call of Duties, where they're jumping and mantling to other buildings, quick ADS, bam, 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 and then turn around the other way, like 360 no scope someone else. I don't know. Like, it doesn't look like this is that game, but it seems like maybe there will be a way to. But you have to think about how to create your character to be that way. It also sounds like it might not be suitable for every situation.
I'm hoping quick scoping is gone. Some people mentioned they might have figured out a way to do it, but it's so like you bring up your scope so slowly that I don't think you could do it.
Yeah.
But we had a couple of moments that were like, oh, this is old Call of Duty. Like, we spawned on a map, we ran up, and just a grenade came over the wall from their spawn, and just all three of us died instantly.
Wow.
And it was like, yep, that person got the timing down. This is old Call of Duty.
Yeah, some old school Call of Duty cheese right there, right?
So you see like old Call of Duty,
Sure.
like there. It's just you have to do more thinking to get to it.
Okay. All right.
And I don't know, again, like I feel like somebody at some point is gonna figure out the old Call of Duty loadout, and they're gonna like, and that worries me. Like I'm worried that like the slower, more methodical guys are just gonna get overtaken again by shotgun slidey McDude. And we did get kill streak rolled in the big team battle mode one time, where we were just getting dominated, and it was like, classic like airstrike,
Yeah.
A10, spawn camp, done. So it can happen, it's just less common.
Sure.
Do you think like the realistic presentation might discourage that? Because like that's the whole thing with this Call of Duty is like it's more realistic, and you look at like the level of detail in the animations, like the weapon sway, they're clearly going for like a more realistic feel that just makes it naturally. I feel like maybe your brain will naturally like want to play it more like tactically and slower because it looks like that kind of game.
I think that's how we were all playing it. I mean, that's right on. That's how we were all playing it in this event because it looked that way.
Right.
But
if you can still play
yeah.
it arcadey, someone's going to do it.
I was an early, I went to the first Rainbow Six Siege demos, and they also started like that and
Right.
evolved into Counter-Strike, where people didn't use the gadgets and jump through windows. So I don't know what's going to happen once the public gets their hands on this game, but it initially feels like you should play it more slowly. I will say there's some things that I've wanted for a long time, like just when you're running in this game, your gun drifts away from your head to kind of indicate how long it'll take for the gun to snap back up. And that means when you run, you're at a disadvantage. Like if you run around a corner, the person that is not running has a faster time to get their scope up. So that should discourage that type of play style.
All right. I'm sold on Call of Duty, being fundamentally different from what it's been in recent years. My last question would be, though, is that for those who play this game every year, is this too dramatic of a shift for them in your eyes?
That's a really interesting question. I think this game is maybe for relapsed Call of Duty players who've drifted off to other games. Fans of Modern Warfare who just felt like Call of Duty got too samey after that and want to come back to it. If you just want to run into a room and throw a grenade and shoot everybody, you might be able to do that, but I don't know if that crowd's going to be, that crowd wasn't happy with operators because operators could do things to stop them. So it's a real crapshoot as to whether the core Call of Duty crowd wants a more realistic sim-style shooter, but I think they'll successfully pull in people from a lot of other games to come and try Call of Duty again. That seems like what they're going for.